He, along with his friends John Smith and Anthony Vaughn, began to dig a hole. Again, this is 1795. We don't have this on a vlog or anything, guys, okay? This is a fucking pit in the ground.
What if you just made
an
it up?
animal digging a hole for its family or something that they saw. But according to the story, it looked clearly like a dig site, like somebody had buried something there.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another creepy video. This one's really weird. This is an unsolved mystery that's pretty old. Such an interesting story that I'm sure a lot of you haven't heard of. But before we get started with that, this video is kindly sponsored by Shudder. Shudder is AMC's premium streaming service, and this is for content that is all related to horror, thriller movies, suspense. They have a huge library of creepy content if you're into that type of thing. And they have really cool member-only perks such as exclusive releases and VIP movie screenings. Shudder believes that there is safety in numbers. Don't be left in the dark alone. It costs $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. And with Shudder, you have unlimited access to a bunch of scary titles, horror classics, blockbuster hits, and there are new titles added weekly. And if you have a Shudder membership, you get unlimited access to everything on the platform, and you also can use it on your mobile device. Obviously, all the content on there is ad-free, which is awesome. And Shudder's offering you guys the opportunity to try it out for free for 30 days. Just click the link below and use the code Kendall Rae to start your trial. And if you decide to try it out, I definitely recommend checking out The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So big thank you to Shudder for sponsoring this video. Now let's get right into the story of the Circleville letters. So Circleville, Ohio is about 25 miles outside of Columbus, Ohio, and its population is 13,000, so it's definitely considered a small town. The town is pretty quiet and doesn't have very many outside visitors.
Driving around Circleville today would be much like driving around Round Town in the late 1970s. Nothing changes much. In fact, the population continues to go down. There would be one major change, though. Back then, there were the letters.
And in 1976, people living in this town started receiving letters from an anonymous source. The letters didn't contain a return address. However, many of them were postmarked in Columbus. A few of these letters were even postmarked with Circleville itself. They were sent to a bunch of different people. We're gonna focus on one particular case, but they were sent to politicians, people in the town, and they claimed to know very specific details and secrets of the recipients. They were often very threatening, very hateful, and just scary.
And a lot of it was vindictive in tone. I mean, nasty in tone. There was sexually oriented material or accusations.
Whoever was writing these letters also said that I'm watching you. Anyone who's receiving these letters, I am watching you, which definitely leaves anyone who got one completely creeped out. These letters were mostly handwritten, but some were typed as well. The handwriting is very boxy, kind of block handwriting. It's honestly really good handwriting, and it's in all caps, but there were also notes that included handwriting that looks nothing like the boxy handwriting, which makes people wonder if there's another person writing letters or if this person changed their handwriting in order to kind of throw people off the trail. One thing that's important to note about this is there were literally thousands of letters. However, there are only a few that we can see that are talked about. So one of the first people to start receiving these letters was a school bus driver named Mary Gillespie. The author of the letter talked about how he'd been watching Mary, and he knew that she had a husband and kids. They said that her home was being watched at all times. And the letters also claimed to be aware that Mary was having an affair with the school superintendent, Gordon Massey. And whoever wrote this letter was extremely angry about the affair and was telling her that she had to come clean about it. And there were several letters that Mary received. It wasn't just like a one-time thing. And most of the letters talked about her affair and how she needed to come clean. Whoever wrote them was obviously really upset that she was having an affair. But whenever Mary would receive a letter, she would just hide it and hope nothing ever came out of it. And she did a pretty good job of keeping these letters a secret until one day a letter came in that was addressed to her husband, Ron. The letter to Ron basically said that his wife was having an affair and it was now his responsibility to announce it, end the affair, and if he didn't, he would be killed. Mary told Ron that she had no idea what this person was talking about and she was not having any affair with the superintendent. So for the next few weeks, Mary and Ron decided to just keep the letters hidden, ignore them pretty much. However, the affair became kind of a talk of the town and they couldn't really ignore it anymore. And 2 weeks later, they received another letter. And this time the letter stated, Gillespie, you have had 2 weeks and done nothing. Admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on posters, signs, and billboards until the truth comes out. Well, Mary and Ron decided that this is probably someone that's like in their family, someone they know. So they called a little meeting with their family to kind of go over these letters. And eventually they came to a conclusion that it was some family member, they didn't disclose who, and they wrote them a letter telling them to stop. And they thought, that's where it ends. And it seemed to work for a short period of time. There were no letters. But then on August 19th of 1977, Mary was actually on a trip when Ron received a phone call at his house. According to Ron's kids, he was extremely upset with whoever was on the phone. However, we've never found out who it was, even to this day. I mean, it was 1977. But while he was on the phone, he eventually lost his temper, grabbed a gun, and left the house. Before he left, he looked at his kids and told them that he is going to go confront the person who is writing the letters. However, not long after this, Ron crashed his car into a tree and was found dead at the scene. And at the scene, police also found that one bullet was shot from his gun, but they were never able to figure out where the bullet went, what he was shooting at, or when it was fired. It's possible that it was fired on a completely different day and he just didn't have his gun filled up all the way. So we don't even know if he actually shot the gun that day or really what happened. And when they took Ron's body to the hospital for testing, his blood alcohol level was 1.5 times over the legal limit. Ron was not an alcoholic or a big drinker. Everyone around him thought this was such a strange thing. People said it was completely out of character for Ron to be drunk, and then especially to be drunk and then get in a car. And even though he told his kids that he was gonna go confront the author of the letter, there's no way to prove that that's what he was doing or that's who was on the phone. And police came to the conclusion that this was an accident. I mean, he was drunk driving and did hit a tree. And this did not stop the letters. The letters kept on coming in. They kept on threatening Mary about her affair. And finally, Mary decided to come clean. She said she did have an affair with Gordon, the superintendent. However, she did not start this affair until after some of the letters had been written. That just seems like such bullshit to me. I mean, why would you start an affair with someone after someone accuses you of doing it? Like, hey, I know you're having an affair with Jack over there. And it's like, if you weren't, why would you go start one? Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's not adding up. So it seems like she really did have an affair, and whoever was writing this letter knew about it. A lot of people think that she basically tried to confess so that the letters would stop, but they didn't. February 7th of 1983, Mary was doing her normal school bus route. It was then that she saw a sign that was attached to a fence post, and this sign said something that was threatening to her daughter. Mary was so freaked out, she stopped the bus, pulled over, and went and took the sign down. And while she was taking it down, she noticed that there was another box tied to the other fence post. So she grabbed the sign and the box and took it back onto the school bus, didn't open the box yet, finished the route to school, dropped the kids off at school, and she went back home where she decided she would open the box. Inside the box, she found a pistol, and the string was wrapped around the trigger of the gun. This was designed so if someone picked it up or opened the box that it would somehow pull the trigger and shoot her, like it was booby trapped. She wasn't sure if the gun was real or fake and just thought the whole thing was so creepy, so she just brought the whole contraption into the police station. And police looked around the area where it was found and they weren't able to find anything. They did find a shoe print, but they weren't able to match it to anyone, and they couldn't even confirm that the shoe print had anything to do with the person who set the trap. Now, whoever had this gun tried to get the serial number off of it, tried to like scrape it off, but thanks to lab testing, they were able to know the exact numbers that were on the gun and trace it back to the owner. The serial number on the gun matched a guy named Paul, and Paul happened to be Ron's brother-in-law. But Paul claimed that he was innocent and that the gun had been missing from his garage for a while now.
I don't know when it come up missing. I really don't know what happened to it. And I told him that, and that's the truth. And that's how it was.
So police decided to give Paul a handwriting test and compare his handwriting to the letter. After the test, they determined that the writing was similar enough that they determined that he was the killer and arrested him and charged him. And Paul's trial took place in October of 1983. One of the sheriffs said that Paul had admitted to writing at least 50 of the letters. However, Paul denied this, said that they were making things up, and that if they had proof that he said that, why wouldn't they have some type of document stating it or a recording of him or anything? They had no way to prove that he even said this. And Paul's fingerprints were not found on the booby trap, any of the letters, or at the fence. And they weren't on the gun. And remember the shoe print that they found at the scene? Well, That was not even close to Paul's size. And when they searched Paul's house, they didn't find any evidence. But Paul was ultimately found guilty of the murder and was sentenced to 25 years in prison, even though most of the evidence showed it wasn't him. And Paul ended up being in prison until 1994. And he continued to claim that he was innocent until he passed away in June of 2012. In that 10 years that he was in prison, the letters did not stop. The letters were even going to the sheriff and to Paul while he was in jail. One of the letters to Paul said, "Now when are you going to believe you aren't going to get out of there? I told you 2 years ago. When we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all?" So some people think that Paul was writing himself these letters in jail. However, this is pretty much impossible.
And the focus of the concern was, well, if he's doing this, how could he be getting letters out of prison? How could he be responsible in a secure facility and this happen?
Doesn't seem to fit the profile of the writer. The writer seemed to be very involved in Pickaway County politics. Paul Freshour wasn't even from Pickaway County. He's a real gentle, soft-spoken guy. I think he was framed.
First of all, when you are in jail, you have zero privacy, and someone is checking everything that goes in and out of the jail, mail-wise, like reading it over and checking it. And they even put Paul in solitary confinement, which is horrible, to see if the letters would stop, because you can't write any letters from there. And they didn't. Paul was even given a polygraph test. And in this test, he was asked if he had anything to do with the letters. He said no, and he passed. So authorities started to think Paul had nothing to do with these letters, and he's just sitting in jail for no reason.
The sheriff of Pickaway County, Dwight Radcliffe, is convinced Freshour was the man and guilty of both the attempted murder, of which he was convicted, and of being the letter writer.
But by the time Paul had gotten out of prison in 1994, the letters had pretty much stopped.
To this day, he maintains his innocence, and he's sure that the real criminal is still at large.
Reopen the letter part of it and get in and find out who wrote the letters. I'd also like to see someone look into this, to my former brother-in-law's death. Look, that's not my family anymore, and that's my past. I'm not even gonna look back at it. I've got a new family and a new future, but I still would like to see someone look at that accident real close and the letters.
And years later, there are still so many unanswered questions, and no one has been able to figure out where the letters came from. A journalist named Martin Yant spent a lot of his time researching this case, and he even made a new discovery that was never included in the original trial. Through his research, he discovered that Mary Gillespie told the sheriff that one of the other bus drivers told her that she had been driving the same road about 20 minutes before Mary found the booby trap. When she drove through that intersection, there was a yellow El Camino that was parked there. And the woman described a large man that had sandy hair just kind of chilling by the car. She said that she thought it was weird because when she was going by, he turned around and acted like he was like going to the bathroom or something to avoid contact with her, and she thinks it was because he didn't want to be identified. This description does not fit Paul at all, and because no one ever pursued this, it was never brought up in court. But what's really interesting is that once Martin started posting about the El Camino, he himself started receiving letters and threats. So several years after the letters kind of had stopped, they started again. However, we don't know if these letters are written by the original Circleville writer or if it's someone else. Maybe someone was just interested in the story and wanted to pick up where the other guy left off. The person writing the letter claimed to know that there were more booby traps around that hadn't been set off. Unfortunately, police were never able to find out who wrote these letters or if they were connected to the old letters. And in 1990, the show Unsolved Mysteries did a segment on this case, and before they released the episode, they received a letter of their own.
We receive lots of mail from our viewers, but one postcard stands out from the rest. In fact, it was a threat designed to keep us from telling this story. It reads, "Forget Circleville, Ohio. If you come to Ohio, you El Sickos will pay." It's signed the Circleville writer. But we don't scare that easily.
So we really don't have any answers, but there are a few theories that people have come up with. A lot of people believe that the first round of letters was written by a man named David Longberry. He was a bus driver that worked with Mary and apparently had some type of romantic interest in her. However, she did not have the same feelings for him. And in 1999, David actually became a fugitive for raping a little girl, and he actually committed suicide while on the run from police. Or maybe it was someone else who was interested in Mary. Maybe she was even having more than one affair. Or maybe the son of the superintendent wrote the letters. Superintendent's son was named William, and the reason people think this is that some of the letters were signed with W, but no one was able to figure out like who that was. Some people think that it was even Paul's ex-wife, and this would be Ron's sister. People believe that the person standing next to the El Camino was actually her boyfriend, and it's really interesting because this is actually what Paul believes happened, and he spent 10 years in jail for this. This is also what Martin believes, who was the researcher that spent so many years doing this. Karen was one of the only people that knew that his gun was hidden in the garage, and when he finally went to prison, she regained custody of her house and her children because she had lost it in the divorce. So she kind of had motive there, and it was really good handwriting, maybe female handwriting. I don't know, it is a giant mystery, but it is so interesting. I would love to know what you guys think about this one. I feel like it had to be someone that was involved with the school, or someone that was interested in her romantically. It seems kind of obvious if you'd want to expose an affair, but I don't know. It's just one of those things that's so interesting. But if you have any other information that I missed, definitely let me know in the comments below, and any other theories that you guys have. But that's it for me today, guys. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you next time.